When you think about getting sick, and I'm talking about really sick, not just your runny noses or sore throats, most of us think about the treatments we have to try to get better. The medications, the procedures, the surgeries, the therapies. There are many interventions available in the modern world of medicine that can help us beat the diseases and illnesses we fall victim to, with various degrees of success. Most people would agree that these options give us our best chances of recovery, especially when compared to the vast epidemics, shorter lifespans and poorer quality of life of historic times, and that to actively avoid or refuse them borders on the irresponsible and even the foolish. There is still a stigma surrounding quote-unquote alternative and natural therapies when it comes to serious illness, but in reality this is a result of the political and economical influence in today's world on what is essentially one of the world's biggest businesses, medicine. Now, don't for 1 second mistake this podcast or my own opinion for some anti-society conspiracy theory propaganda. Myself and the medical professionals and people I work alongside and associate with all recognise the undeniable value of modern or conventional medicine. It's a fantastic tool with many real and life-saving practical applications. We go to hospital, we take our tablets and we listen to the advice. But to ignore the other tools available to us as humans, in my opinion, would be just as irresponsible and foolish. A simple human fact is that one of the main reasons we would prefer to pop a pill than to totally change our diets, for example, is that it's difficult. Difficult to change a habit we have followed for many years. Scary to take responsibility for our own health. Easier to trust it to trained professionals like doctors and nurses. It takes a brave individual to make the decision to search out information they believe will help cure themselves, and to refuse to just blindly follow the conventional wisdom of the masses, usually against the wishes and advice of everyone around them. My guest on the podcast today, Gina O'Callaghan, is that individual. I had the privilege of sitting with Gina and listening to her story. How she received some life-changing news out of the blue one day that would start her on a journey of discovery and self-healing, and how she managed to use all of the tools available to her to change her outcome. Following her own experiences, she now focuses all of her knowledge and research into developing her own wellness facility, OSPA, to contribute towards helping others with their own wellness journeys. Gina made it very clear that she's not trying to convince people to stop or avoid other forms of treatment, medical or otherwise, but explains instead that it's so important to understand that the way that you treat your body, how you feed it, how you manage your stress, how you live your life, all contributes to how well you are and how your body performs, particularly when it comes to fighting illness and disease. It's almost cliched to say that stories like Gina's are inspiring or life-changing. But the truth is that when you speak to somebody who has experienced what she has and hear how empowered it makes her to have been able to help herself, it's hard not to draw on that positivity and start to consider the changes you might be able to make to help yourself or those around you. Enjoy. This is a podcast about finding answers to human questions, taking control and feeling good. This is the Human Regeneration Project. Okay, I'm here today with Gina O'Callaghan from the OSPA facility in Streamstown Lane in Malahide. Gina, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to visit you here at your gorgeous facility here. And second, thanks for agreeing to do this podcast with me.
Thanks, Dan. It's a pleasure, and I'm bowled over that you've asked me and interviewed me. Want to find out my story, so thank you for the opportunity.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I was really, really looking forward to this because I first heard your story a while ago and it absolutely fascinated me. And for anybody who's listened to this podcast from the start, this is not just a podcast about, I suppose, medicine or stem cells or things like that. This is a podcast about wellness and feeling good and health. And for me, my understanding of that means feeling good. And I might have mentioned this a couple of times in the podcast. I don't particularly care as a person about what my blood markers say. Now, it interests me, but it's not why I go and visit somebody who can help me. It's to feel good. And your particular story touched me because there's an element of feeling good, there's an element of wellness, there's an element of the holistic And there's also an element of managing an illness and a condition and moving past that with your own kind of knowledge and expertise and reading. And that absolutely fascinates me. And a lot of people who listen to these kind of podcasts, they crave that type of information because everybody wants to be able to help themselves. And I think you really embody that, and the gorgeous facility here embodies that as well. So what I might do first, just to get people more familiar with you and your story, is just to give us a bit of a background into who you are, how you ended up in this particular industry, in this field. And we'll take it from there. We'll have a chat.
Okay. So first of all, I'm a mum, a wife. I had a wonderful career in the business world. I lived in Asia for 20 years. And I knew nothing of wellness, health, looking after yourself. I lived I had a great career in Hong Kong. And it's only when I actually had my children, I started to look at things like when they were getting ill. You had pollution. I started to look at the fact that in Hong Kong, they're not growing their own vegetables and everything was imported. And when my son in particular was born, he suffered an awful lot. He had a lot of chest infections. With every tooth that he got, he was on antibiotics. And I started to see that no matter what, medicine I was giving him, nothing was working for him. So really, my interest started to come in wellness, looking at my children, saying maybe there's a better way to live here. And at the time, we were living in the city, in the pollution.
Okay.
And so that I think was the first step. We took steps to move out of the city and try to look for a better environment for the children. I had a very successful career in Hong Kong in business. I was on the management team of a very large real estate company. Wow. Top of my career, wonderful pay, great social life. And one thing I should mention, I never drank or smoke.
Okay.
Right. It was my upbringing, but I never believed it, never did that. But in Hong Kong, you work to live. And there's no breaks in between. It's constant, okay. Especially in the real estate business. You're on the phone all of the time. You're getting calls on weekends. You're working weekends. So stress does play a massive part, especially in a career like that.
Yeah.
That coupled with children and trying to manage everything. Yeah, I started to see that life was getting very stressful. So I started to look into just getting interested in wellness and maybe slowing down a bit. And I decided maybe this career was, with the children trying to juggle everything, that if I started looking into maybe a more kind of less stressful career, it might be a good thing to do. So I did. I investigated and I took up massage therapy. I did a course in that. And beauty therapy as well. I was nowhere near touching on the holistic side of it. Yeah. It was just maybe this is the direction I should go in whilst I was working. Exactly. Yeah. So now I'm working, now I'm studying, and now I have got children still, and going on. So at the time I didn't see it like that. I didn't see I was actually doing more than I should, but however. Then I find out back in Ireland that my dad had been diagnosed with stomach cancer.
Okay.
And that was like this. I've 10 siblings.
Oh, wow.
And mum and dad, they were in their 70s, and up to that point, I had no experience with death, illness. We were a great family, we still are, but this was just a massive shock to the system for me and for the rest of my family. And we watched him pretty much deteriorate up to the point where he sadly passed. And that was a massive stress where you're taking kids out of school, you're flying back here to see him in his last couple of weeks, and then we obviously saw him pass, and that was a massive shock. Back in Hong Kong 2 weeks later, I get a call to say that my uncle had passed of a massive heart attack. And the backstory to my mum, my uncle and my dad is that they grew up together. They were best friends.
Okay,
and when my dad passed, my uncle passed within I think 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I didn't make it back for the funeral. It was just too much. And 3 weeks later, I find out my mum's in the hospital with heart failure because it was just a broken heart. She just couldn't. So again, Groundhog Day, back on the flight, back home. She had passed before I landed. And it was just literally like looking at Groundhog Day the whole time. Same funeral, same flowers, same church. Devastating for all of us. So back to Hong Kong, and you're grieving. You're still getting on with life because you have to. You've got 2 children. And I say to myself, okay, I'll do a medical. I'll just make sure everything's okay with me. So in Hong Kong, when you've got medical coverage, it's Rolls Royce. They like when you do a medical, everything is done. Bloods, heart, you name it. They check everything to an inch of your system, and it all came out. You've got a wonderful body. Everything is great. You're very healthy. Everything's working. That was great. That was in, say, October of 2013. And by 2014, March, I woke up one night with a pain on my right side. Up to that point, I didn't really have any symptoms. I had hemorrhoids.
Okay.
For a few years since I had the children.
Yeah.
And they were slightly getting more painful. I'd visit different doctors. They'd give you different over-the-counter medicine.
This is all over in Hong Kong?
In Hong Kong, or if I was home on holidays. I noticed when I was home seeing my father so ill and coming home and back and forth, they were getting more painful.
Okay.
But again, you just say it's only just hemorrhoids, whatever. I had no other symptoms. And so I wake up back to in March 2014. I wake up during the night, and this pain started in the hemorrhoids but moved up towards my kidney.
Okay.
And I remember waking up and looking in the mirror, got out of bed and looked in the mirror and looked deep in my eyes. I can't explain this to you, but this voice said to me, "You're very sick." So you can imagine, like, this I'm just looking, and something in me just said, "No, you're really sick."
You just knew.
Yeah, I'm not a type of a diva person. I'm not a type of an overreactor.
Yeah.
I know when there's something.
And had you ever had a feeling like that before?
Never in my life.
Okay.
It was the most amazing feeling. Like, I was just there. I just knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
I remember waking my husband, and he's like, "Take a few painkillers, you'd be grand. Come on, it's the middle of the night, And I insisted so much that I needed just to go to a hospital that I remember getting dressed and him trying to convince me to, take a few painkillers, I'd be fine, to literally popping on a tracksuit and trying to hail a taxi in the middle of the night on a street. Until I realised I couldn't get one. It was too late. Back in and said, "Listen, you got to take me." So, of course, we had home help. We had a helper, so she minded the children, and off we went. I thought I'd be in A&E for at least a couple of hours, and I'd be sent home with maybe some antibiotics for an infection or of some sort, until they said, "Listen, we don't have a bed for you here. We're going to send you to a private hospital over on the island," because we lived on mainland.
Okay.
And of course my husband's like, "Oh, can you not just give her some tablets, All along I'm not saying, but the pain's getting worse and I feel very faint at this stage.
And no one had told you to this point what it might be or could be?
No. So popped me into his car and drove me to the island saying, "Oh, do we really need to do this?" As any person would do.
Yeah,
it's the middle of the night and now we're going. So get into hospital, and they take you serious over there, You're literally in a scan within an hour.
Wow.
Especially private.
Yeah.
And I remember they admitted me. They wanted to find out what the pain was. And I remember this little man coming into the room, this doctor, and his face told the story. And my husband was oblivious to this. I was just so tuned because I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't like the look of your scan." So basically, on a scan, everything should be where it is. But the kidney, the right kidney, was basically pushed. Shifted. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going to come, but he had said this. And so he said, "I'm going to sign you off, and you're going to need a doctor that can perform surgery." Okay, and you can imagine, like, the alarm bells. You're saying, what's going on?
What's the surgery for?
What's it for?
Yeah.
So my husband's like, "Oh, with the language barrier out there, he's being melodramatic. We'll get an expatriate doctor. He'll explain."
Okay.
So with that, an expatriate doctor comes very quickly. Not like Ireland at all. You're literally in there, and you're attended straight away. And he said, "Listen, I want to do a handheld scan, and find out really what's going on." So we all started to calm down then. Okay, what this other doctor had said, no, that's not right. Yeah. And he said, "I need to do keyhole surgery. I need to figure out what's shifted this. I can do it now if you're in a lot of pain. I'm willing to do it now, or we could do it in the morning. And the personality, the type of personality I have, I make decisions very quickly. Not necessarily a good idea.
Yeah.
I said, do it now.
Okay.
And my husband, you can imagine, is in shock.
Yeah.
Now I'm going into surgery in the same evening. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He said it would take an hour. It was keyhole. And we would figure out and get to the bottom of it. I was about 4, 5, 6 hours in there.
In theatre?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My husband doesn't know what's going on. I get wheeled out. They're pumping blood into me. I've lost so much blood. I wake up and I don't know what's going on. And he came and explained that I had endometriosis.
Okay.
And that it had grown into the ovaries. Okay? And that he'd done a subtotal hysterectomy, meaning they took half of the uterus away. Because of the endometriosis was pretty bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't picked up on the scan. On a CT scan, it was invisible.
Just hence, because of the positioning or the way they do the
scan? They don't know.
They
can't explain. Okay? And hence why, if you think back to the year before, in the October...
That it was a complete clean bill of health.
Clean bill of health. So that night, he leaves us with, you're going to be fine. We'll be back. We're sending a few tests off, but you'll be fine. I waited the whole day next day and nothing. And there was a lady in the bed beside me. It was a kind of a room with 2 people. And we got talking, and she was in there for the same thing, but they had a worry that she might have cancer, so they were sending tests away.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there thinking, poor girl.
Yeah.
Poor girl, I wouldn't like to be in that position.
Yeah.
So around 7 o'clock in the evening, I remember they had given me my food and I couldn't eat it because I just had this feeling, And my husband just arrived in after settling the kids at home. And the doctor goes by my bed and goes to the lady next. And he says to her, it's not cancer, you're free to go. And her husband kissing, hugging.
Yeah.
And he popped into me and he said, close the curtain, I'm really sorry, but you've got cancer.
Oh, well.
So at that stage, I'm sitting on the bed and I started to literally look behind me because I thought he was talking. He just couldn't be talking to me because I'm a healthy young woman. The only symptom I had was this small pain that just came in it could have been appendix, it could have been anything. I mean, do you have this right? And he said, basically the endometriosis had grown into both of the ovaries and caused cancer in the ovaries, in both ovaries. So this is a little bit different. I'll just explain to ovarian cancer.
Okay.
Ovarian cancer, your cancer will grow, as my understanding, is on the outside of the ovaries. Okay. This was inside.
Inside.
Yeah. So when he had taken the ovaries out, they obviously put in surgically this bag to put it into the bag while they're taking it out so it doesn't spill, but both spilled.
Really?
Yeah. And so he said, listen, we're going to send you home. You'll probably have to have chemotherapy, but we're going to get back to you in the next couple of days. You're just in disbelief at this stage, and you just have to gather your thoughts. When you hear the word cancer, you think of death. Cancer equals death.
Immediately, yeah.
There's no other way around it. It's cancer, death.
Yeah.
I'm going to die.
And you're also in shock from just having had a procedure you didn't think you needed 24 hours ago. Yeah.
So I go home to the children, and all of a sudden you're out of your body. You're not in your life. This is the way I explain it. Everyone you know, everyone you love is on this roundabout that's spinning, and you've just been kicked off it.
Okay, and you're standing
You're
watching.
looking back watching, and you're thinking, in your head, you don't have long to live.
And they hadn't given you a timeline?
Nothing.
Like
but this is just how it impacts the mind.
Yeah.
So the story goes on. They now need to do a second investigating surgery.
Yeah.
And now I'm told that the doctor that done the original surgeon is not an oncologist, so he can't perform this. Yeah. He's going to be in on the surgery to learn, but he's not going to perform it. This professor is going to perform it. So I'm within 3 weeks back up to the hospital to have this operation. And at this stage, my husband's family had come over to mind the children, and I was very grateful of that. With me, you'll get to know my kids first. They're everything, you know. So once I had that, I could go and face this.
Okay.
So I'm in private hospital, and he comes and sees me, and his first thing is, "Oh, you're thin. That's great. This is good. This is really good." You know, little Chinese doctor, lovely man. And tells me what's going to happen. He's going to go in and he's going to investigate, and he's going to take the rest of the uterus out. Okay. And now I'm jumping ahead. I just want to tell you one more thing. They sent me for a PET scan in between this.
In the 3 weeks that you were waiting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to say that. That was to see on the scan, was there anything else happening? Yeah. It all came back clear, bar tiny little specks around the bowel area. And we're talking about, the report said this could be due to just blood.
Okay.
There was nothing. They said it. So he had said that to me that day he came in. This is going to be a straightforward surgery. You're clear of everything. This is great. Perfect. I go in for the surgery. And just to give you a little experience of what I'm going through, this is the second time on the surgical bed, and the doctors are fighting with the nurses because the nurses don't have the utensils ready, and I'm just like,
it's the last thing
listening to all of this.
Theater, yeah.
I'm put out, I'm put asleep, and I wake up, everything is fine. Comes in the room, clean as a whistle. I can't see any cancer. You're going to be absolutely fine. But we did send, tissue off to be tested. Yeah. Just one thing I'd like to mention to you is that when the previous doctor did a subtotal hysterectomy, your appendix, because you no longer had a uterus, your intestines fall down, and your appendix fell down and stuck in the uterus that was cut. Oh, wow. That's the only thing I'll just note about it, he said. Yeah. So we took away the appendix, we took away the omentum, we took away most of your lymph nodes in the pelvic area. And they're all gone off, but you should be, I'm happy with it. So, okay, a day or two goes by, I'm waiting on results, and I'm in great form because I'm free, I'm clear, I'm clean, I'm so happy,
And physically, how did you feel? Were you obviously exhausted from the surgery? But
I was. It was like a full incision from top to the bottom, and like it was painful.
Okay.
They had a tube in.
Yeah.
And at one stage, I was in massive pain with that, and they couldn't understand. They thought, it might be maybe cancer's at the growing back, or there was loads of doctors around me. They realised they left the tube in too long, and as soon as they pulled that, the pain went, okay. Which was great. So apart from that, I was in top form, great form. I was eating French fries. This was it. I was celebrating. Mm-hmm. And a telephone came. My husband's out on the balcony of the hotel room. And I pick up the telephone. I thought it was my sister. She's in town. And it's the doctor. He didn't come to my room. He said, I'm terribly sorry to tell you, but we found a second cancer.
This is in the scans they sent away?
This is the tissue they sent away from the operation. We missed it. It's a very rare form of uterine cancer, cervical cancer. Not like the normal HPV or... He said this is what about 34 people have it in the world. In the world? In the world, and we don't know much about it. We don't know how it behaves. And seemingly on the first operation, the doctor had cut right through it. And essentially released it into your system? Yes. Okay. So now the surrounding of the appendix had it on it. So, but don't worry, I'll come and speak to you tomorrow and explain the whole thing to you. So now I'm dying. Yeah. And I remember ringing my sister in floods of tears, and I just said, they found a second cancer, and now you've been told you're really, really sick, even though I didn't feel it. So he came the next day and sat in the bed and explained to me that what had happened, and he said, listen, don't worry too much, because it's my opinion that we found it on the appendix, but it didn't go through the body and behave that way. It was actually by default that it had been on the surrounding of the appendix. Okay. That didn't matter to me, as you could imagine. They've spread cancer, and this is all you're worried about. The details don't really kind of mean anything to you. So now, because this is after happening, you also have to have radiation. Okay. So now you're facing chemotherapy for the first 6 months, and then radiotherapy. So I leave, I come home, devastation sets in, and all you're thinking then is, okay, I just want this chemotherapy as soon as possible. I need to kill this cancer. I need to, But of course, they have to let you heal and all the rest. We go and visit the doctor that was going to give me the chemotherapy, and that was something in itself. Basically, she asked my husband to sign a form to say that the chemotherapy they were giving to me was the strongest they had, and that it was for palliative care purposes.
Oh, wow.
So given the fact that the doctor previously had said, listen, you're going to be fine, this didn't spread internally, it only spread by operation, I think you're going to be fine, to this is palliative care. Go on home and sign this form and think about it, and in a couple of weeks turn up for your chemotherapy. So again, I remember getting home, and back to the analogy of the being thrown off the roundabout. Now I'm out on the limb and I'm dying. Yeah. And the kids come home from school, they're happy, they know nothing of it. And you're just in despair. You just cannot believe. And all the while, everything that you're thinking, everything that is going to happen, is the power is in the doctor's hands. You have no power. You've just been told. And don't get me wrong, I respect doctors. They're wonderful. I'm not against any of this, but I'm just explaining how I felt. Everything they say, you're hanging on every word. They have the power.
Yeah,
you're powerless.
Yeah.
So coming from a background of never knowing about wellness, holistic health, or anything like that, that's how you are. You're in that position. What they say is true.
And coming from a background of a high-powered job, you're in control, you make the decisions, and now you've nothing.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so now my husband's looking at me and I'm looking at him and I'm saying, I won't see these children growing up. And he's like, no, don't be so silly. And you just know he's pacifying you. Yeah. So my sisters always had, and one in particular, always had healing abilities, always was drawn to that type of wellness.
Okay.
So I and my brother as well. And I remember that they were trying to get my dad when he was alive to take juices and read up on it, and he was too set in his ways. He didn't believe in any of that. So I was speaking to my husband, maybe we could do something here, it's got to be something, knowing full well that I couldn't. Yeah. So he gets on and he orders this book from, what I decided was I wasn't going to look at stories of tales on the internet that were doomed. This is what I did, but I died, or my sister died, or my dad died. Yeah. I said, I just don't want to deal with that. That for me is a no. And I said, the stories I want to look at, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that you have to be careful with because they want to sell you something. You could spend 2 hours reading an article and at the end of it, they're trying to sell you a product. Yeah. And you get so mad. Yeah. So I said, right, what are my criteria? Back with my business head. I'm not going to look at stories of negativity. I'm certainly not going to look at stories, that are trying to sell something. So what do you do? So I said, okay, I'm going to look for science-based stories, perhaps that doctors themselves have either experienced, gone through, or helped patients with. I'll believe them, is what I thought. So I'm lying in bed. My husband takes the children out to the playground, and all of a sudden this book gets delivered to the door, and it was the anti-cancer book on diet, and it was from a brain doctor who got brain cancer.
He's a medical doctor.
A medical doctor. Okay. And he basically went through the whole chemo, I don't think chemo works, but I think it was radiation. And he found out as a student when he was getting in, doing all these scans and sharing his work, that he actually had a tumour. So he went down the route of the the chemotherapy and all of the rest, and it shrank. And then he went back to his life. He started taking burgers and beer and all the rest. And within a couple of years, it came back, but it came back worse.
Okay.
So he realised that he had the control over all of these studies that they were doing as students, and started to look at the people that actually cancer didn't come back and what they've done. And that's where the story takes you in this book. Okay. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. I remember just crying tears, saying, these people have taken control. Like to me, control was a big thing. Yeah. So I said, so I remember ringing him up, my husband up, he was in the playground with the kids. I said, this is it. I know how we can get ourselves out of this. And from there on, I spent hour after hour, thousands of hours, investigating the same criteria, but how to get well. And diet played a massive part in that. But also, there's a book called Radical Remissions.
Okay.
And it was a researcher that went out and interviewed people that had basically recovered. They didn't particularly use the chemotherapy radiation route, but the theme through it all was that they connected mind and body, that there wasn't just a diet that was going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my research went in that direction. So we getting back to the chemotherapy, we go, and you can imagine in my mind is, do I need this chemotherapy?
Had you started at this stage?
No.
You hadn't started the
No.
treatment yet? Okay.
And I'm thinking, maybe I don't need this.
Yeah.
So I go and speak to her, and she has me dead in the water. Like
The doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember my husband ringing about this particular form he wanted him to sign on my behalf, basically stating that it was for palliative care reason and that she had no responsibility if I died from chemotherapy because it was so strong. When you get to these office, you know, of this doctor that's going to treat you, you start getting doubts in your mind that, you know, again, these are the ones that are going to fix you. What if you didn't take the chemotherapy? And then getting back to my children, I've got 2 children here. I can't mess around.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not just your life in the balance.
It's not just my life.
Yeah.
So, and I'm looking at my husband saying, you know, we're going to do this. I didn't have the courage to say no.
Okay.
So I went ahead with it. But getting back to the story of she wanted him to sign this letter, he crossed out palliative care.
Without the doctor knowing? Or
No, right to her face.
Really? Okay.
And handed it back.
Fair play.
And she said, I've never been spoken to this way before. This is how it is. And Robert explained that, you know, it was by default that I had it on my appendix. I wasn't at stage 4.
Yeah.
But I was stage 4 on paper, and she said, what do you want me to do? It's on paper, it's on paper. So we'll agree to disagree. We'll go ahead on this chemotherapy basis, but that's the end.
Okay.
But he got his mark, he marked it out. He said, no way, you know. So I'm on chemotherapy now. And I'm also not listening to a word they're saying. Like, I'd come in, she'd say, now you're after losing loads of weight. You need to, you know, bring her for cakes and tea. Make sure you keep that weight up. And of course, I'm not listening to that. I'm at home juicing.
Okay.
I'm at home eating. I said, after reading the book, I said to my husband, I'm going vegan. And he's like, no, you can't do that. You must eat meat. You must. And I'm like, I instinctively knew what I wanted to do straight away.
And did they explain to you when they're giving you this? Obviously, we know they're trying to keep your energy up.
Energy up, weight up.
But that they didn't kind of give you any real robust science behind why they want you eating. It's just, we need to keep your energy up.
We need to keep your energy up.
And they didn't give you any alternative ways of keeping your energy up.
No alternative ways.
Okay.
And the worst thing about this was I sat on a chair and my husband sat next to me, and she spoke to him directly like I wasn't even a person.
You're the third person.
Tell her to eat this. Tell her to eat that. And I was a nothing on the chair. She wouldn't look me in the eye.
Wow.
So I'd turn up to my chemotherapy sessions with a bag of vegetables. I'd specifically go to the supermarket beforehand, and I'd have organic veg like you wouldn't believe in a bag beside me that I was going to go home and juice, you know, and eat salads with. And as I was turning up for these sessions, my bloods were fine, you know, and she's looking at me. And she's starting to look into the bag now. Well, what are you doing? Without asking me, what am I doing? Yeah. I started to walk. So I'd be in bed after a chemotherapy session and I'd sleep all evening. Next day, I would literally pull myself out of the bed and I'd go walking till I built that up to a run.
Wow. This is while you're doing chemotherapy?
Yeah, in 38-degree heat.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to get moving. And so I spent the whole next day, you know, eating well, and after the walk I'd go back and I'd rest well, and then the rest of my evening will be spent focusing on getting well, not dying. Okay. So I invested my mind into anytime I got a thought, and I got thoughts, especially when your husband turns on one side and you turn on your other, and you're there thinking this is it. No, I'd actually sit up and start saying, no, I'm going to read more. So I start focusing on living and not dying.
And did this mindset, was this just Gina's mindset?
This is Gina's mindset.
This wasn't something particular that was coached to you by all the reading that you were doing. They weren't saying, and obviously a lot of people who go through this, the message afterwards is positive mindset, but a lot of people get that from somebody else. This was just kind of you deciding, no, I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to do it this way.
Well, you know, obviously research will affect you. So somewhere in the research I might have got those ideas.
Yeah, okay. But you still need to apply them.
you need to apply them. And, you know, before all of this happened, if I had said to someone like my father, be positive, that was just a saying to me. I didn't even understand that concept.
I agree with you there, yeah.
That's just nonsense.
Yeah.
It's not about being positive. It's about where you put your focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you focus on the negative, you know, that's where it's going to end.
That's where
for
you
me,
head. Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
So I put all my focus on the positive, researching, okay? And anytime this thought came in, I tried to train my mind to get it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes my husband would have to give me a talking to, and I'd get back on. I'm human at the end of the day.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But primarily, this is how I went. So all the way through chemotherapy, they're scanning me as well.
Okay.
And there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing. But all the while, the doctor is very cautious, telling me, well, this could come back at any moment.
Yeah.
So it comes to the end of the chemotherapy, and now you have to start your radiotherapy. And what comes into my head? I don't need this.
Yeah.
I don't have anything here. I'm very healthy. And I go and meet the radiologist. Lovely person, lovely man. And he convinced me because he said, this is very rare. We don't know how it's going to behave. It could be not there today and there tomorrow. But the advantage of being in Hong Kong was that they had one of the, I think, the only machines at the time that had precision radiotherapy.
They could target exactly
that
where they wanted.
nothing else is going to be affected.
Okay.
And that for me was it, okay, I'll do it. Again, 2 children, I'll try anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So in I went. And this was the moment I knew that my mind was everything to do with how it was getting well and getting through this. And I'll give you a story. So I sat in for my first radiotherapy session, and you're terrified. So you do a little bit of reading, and even when you just type it in, the stories come up, you know, this burns, this hurts. And as much as I don't want to read that, it's there, and you're going, okay, and you push it away.
Yeah.
You're thinking, what's going to happen to me, you know? So you get put in a gown. You get taken into like 3 rooms with big steel doors.
It's like a bunker.
Like a bunker. And you're led into this machine. And it's like a CT machine, and you're lying in it. And then the beam comes from the ceiling down, and that's how it works. So I'm lying in this machine, and they come in and they say, this light's going to come on, this sound is going to, it's fine, you'll have it done, we'll come in and get you when it's done. And they put earphones on you. So the first stage of it is to scan you, to map it, and then do the so they map it, I hear the machine and everything, and then they say, okay, Gina, this is the radiation now, it's going to come. So I'm lying there, and I see the light, and I hear the noise. And the next thing, I feel this pain. And it's all around my pelvic area, and I'm on fire.
Wow.
To the point where I've tears rolling down, and I'm just about to hit the button to say, get me out of here, this is too much. The pain is so bad. And a voice comes over and says, sorry, Mrs. O'Callaghan, we can't get the machine working. Just give us a few minutes and we'll turn it on.
No way. They hadn't even turned it on yet.
No. So I realised from that moment in time that what I put in my mind is how I'm going to feel.
So you had actually triggered that with your feeling of, oh, here we go, the panic. You triggered what you thought was the pain from the laser, but actually they hadn't even
and that
turned
was
it on
real
yet.
pain.
That's incredible.
So I knew then, I thought to myself, okay, if I can think and dream this up and feel it, how powerful is this mind?
Yeah.
You know? So then I start going into the direction of meditation and what that can do for me. And I had very powerful experiences. First of all, I couldn't. I'd be lying there and saying, okay, what's this all about? And I'd listen to some music, and then thoughts would come in, and I couldn't get with it. But the more you do it, the more you can actually get some space where there's nothing in the mind.
Yeah.
And all this stuff started coming up for me about my life and about how I internalize things and who I am. And I started to journal then and really find out, like, you think in your life, because you're influenced by your siblings, your parents, your friends, what you see on the TV, you think you're the person you are, but you don't necessarily have a purpose, and you don't necessarily do things that really are true to you. You do them because of your influences and your environment.
Yeah.
And so this was a really good space for me to figure out who I was, what my purpose is. And when I found that, I never, from that moment in time, thought I was going to die, ever. And it never has hit me since. I was full sure that I found my purpose. I wasn't going anywhere. And that was okay, you know. And the way I looked at this cancer journey was like a divine tip on the shoulder to say, hey, stop what you're doing.
Yeah.
You need to take control here and really make a difference. And not disrespecting people that are going through it.
Of course, yeah.
And trying to put that this is an easy process. It's not in any shape or form. But just looking back, this is how I felt. I feel that it was a tip on the shoulder to say, hey, you know. So I was going through this course as the holistic course as I was doing radiation. I went back to it because I had to take a break because I found out.
You did continue with the radiation.
Oh, yeah.
They switched the machine on. You went for it. Did you have the pain when they switched the machine on?
Nothing.
That's mad.
I continue on the diet. I continue on everything, and again, no side effects.
And when you're going, obviously you've gone how many months of chemo?
So I believe it was within a 6-month period, but it was once every 3 weeks.
Once every 3 weeks, you're going through a chemotherapy protocol. You're going through a radiation protocol. What are they measuring here that they're saying, okay, this is working, this isn't working? Or had they just prescribed this and they're just doing it to make sure they...
I was scanned and checked all of the way.
But you were clear the whole way?
I was clear from the start.
You were clear from the start. So like, what was their justification for doing this entire protocol if you were just pretty much clear?
I think maybe it was the fact that they had cut through the cancer.
They were just worried.
They were very, very worried.
Okay.
And here's something I should mention, which I can't believe this. When I went to the oncologist that did the second operations office, he had told me in hospital everything was going to be great.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there to tell me the plan going forward, you know, like that I'll have chemo and everything was going to be fine. And he wouldn't look at me in the eye on this office appointment. And I just got very aware of this and I got very uneasy. And he changed my plaster and sent me on my way. And I remember he said, I have a letter for you for the chemotherapy doctor. Just wait in the hall. And I remember sitting there saying to my husband, there's something wrong.
Yeah, why won't he look at me?
Why won't he look at me? And he said, again, what are you talking about? You're just hypersensitive. This is all cool. I said, the guy wouldn't look me in the eye. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Hands me this letter, the secretary, and now I pop into the hall and I rip it open. There was 2 letters, one for the radiologist and one for the chemotherapy. So chemotherapy first ripped it. Tests have just come back to say that we haven't got it all. Basically, what we thought were just like damage from the operation, when we took bits off this, it's all got cancer on it. So this person has still got cancer in her.
And he didn't say this to you?
No.
He wrote it in a letter?
He wrote it in a letter.
Not addressed to you either?
Not addressed to me.
Okay,
so I ripped open the other one and I said something similar. So
Yeah.
of course, like, you know, and that was probably enough to make me get the chemo, because I'm now figuring out what they're saying about me without telling me to my face.
Yeah.
So and another story I have to add to that was when at one stage I said maybe I don't need this chemo, and I had mentioned it I had gone back to the first operation doctor. He had to sign me off. I said, I'm thinking of maybe either not having it or possibly going home to have it. That's what it was. Possibly going back to Ireland, my family, my children, and all the rest.
Support system.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got 3 phone calls that day from each doctor that were treating me to say I'll be mad to go home.
Did they give you a reason?
Your children are here in school. You're going to upset your life. Don't do this. Have it here.
Did you get a sense that maybe wasn't the reason, or they were looking for something else? They were trying to keep you there for, was it money?
Money.
Okay.
Cancer is a business.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't understand any of this. I couldn't understand why. I said, they really, really care about me. They're all calling me saying, have it here.
This is the reason this works, is because you are the patient at the time.
Exactly.
And you have everything to lose. So
Exactly.
You will believe.
You will believe.
Anything you're told.
You will believe anything you're told. So, we had a chance. So I'm past all the treatments now, and I'm fine. So I have to continue to research, because the way I think is, how do I prevent it from coming back?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm continuing doing everything I'm doing.
And are you still in the job at this stage?
No, I had walked out of the job. I'd finished. I was just when I done my radiation last treatment on the Friday. I set my holistic therapy massage therapist exams on the Monday.
Oh wow!
And I passed, and I was thrilled. And my sister came over for her last holiday, and I was packing up and I was coming home.
Okay.
I decided. My husband had an opening in his job back here, and I decided, okay, if I want to sustain this health, I need to, proper air, fresh air, and I need, fruit and vegetables to sustain fresh, because in Hong Kong, it's an island. They don't grow anything, and everything is imported. So I physically packed up 120 boxes myself.
Wow.
My husband flew. He went back to work. He's a pilot, so he flew. Okay. This was it. I was actually packing every single box, and I was coming. Arrived home, and I'm back 4 years now.
Okay.
And I remember at the time I was telling everyone that I was going to set up this business in my therapies, and also to try and set up a blog and help people just from my story, to see if I can encourage or inspire someone to really get to the crux of who they are, and share it. And I remember my friends and family looking at me saying, "That's very nice, that's great," and behind my back saying, "Oh my God,
mad.
This is mad. Like, she must be just saying this just to get through this." And they're looking at me like every sneeze, every cough, like, okay? Is it coming back? Is it, and thankfully 5 years I've just been signed off. There is no cancer in my body. And here I am today.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely incredible. It really is an inspirational story for several reasons, and there's loads there I want to unpack. Because you touch on so many interesting areas. Obviously, congratulations first of all, just been signed off. That's fantastic. There's one particular underlying theme there that I'm picking up definitely, and it's this dance that seems to happen between the medical world and the client. And we mentioned there that when you're the patient, you're the client, you'll do anything, you want to do anything. Now in your case, you took control yourself and you did a lot of research. But when you're sitting with a lot of these doctors, one thing that's very, very evident is you can apply this to so many arguments nowadays. The cannabis argument is one, the holistic eating and health and mindfulness, all that kind of stuff. They do not want to risk that they're dealing with a client who might not be like you, because you're very driven, and you were, and I know it was extremely difficult, which you've outlined there. This is not an easy thing to do, and on some part I think they know that, and they would not like to advise you, okay Gina, go and juice, it's fine, because then they're unfortunately liable, and that term comes in, they're liable because they have a duty of care, and these are the guideline treatments they do. And I think that the level of trust or belief that they have that you're going to go and be able to take control of this is not there. So there is this dance where maybe on some, and they have to, at this stage, they have to know that there are other ways of managing this. And we touched on the financial motivator there as well. That's obviously a huge part. But loads of doctors, and I know loads of doctors as well, who would be like this, who are very, very solid, good, nice, really honest people, and they still wouldn't recommend that you go and juice and go walking and read books and be positive. They would say you need to go and have chemo and radiotherapy. I know you did that, but you're firmly in the camp of it was everything else that you did that has you sitting here in front of me today, and I'm there with you. I absolutely believe that. But it's a really difficult topic to discuss sometimes, especially when you're discussing with people who haven't gone through a journey like you, because you go to your doctor and they tell you something and you have to make a decision either to ignore that doctor or to challenge that doctor or to bring in the research that you found and have them, in some cases unfortunately, ridicule it or say no, absolutely not, there's no science to back that. But again, you're sitting here in front of me with a real story, and it's you've probably heard this story repeated in several cases around the world. I won't say millions, but probably hundreds of people have gone through a similar journey. So if you're speaking to people who are in that position, like most people are, who are afraid or don't know how to start, you said it was something intrinsic, but the research definitely helped, and the book you mentioned, what was the name of the book?
There was a couple actually. Well, it was a lot, but Radical Remissions is a powerful book.
Radical Remissions.
Yeah, she this researcher, she goes and she interviews people who have gone through a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
They not necessarily had chemo radiation. They just done various different therapies and have recovered.
Well.
Now, as I said, I'm not advocating this.
Of course, yeah.
I think chemo and radiation is very personal, and I would never ever tell anyone not to do it. I did it.
Yeah.
But just if you're in that position, just take a minute. Like what I've learned is, it was wonderful being in Hong Kong. I was seen within an hour. I had an operation within 3 or 4 hours. I had chemotherapy within 3 weeks, and you think that's great. I had great care, but jumping into something so fast is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
What if I had said to that doctor that night, no, don't operate tonight, do it in the morning? What if, he had got up fresh, came in and said, I've had a look, it looks cancerous, let's do a full operation the next day, you know, maybe it wouldn't have been cut the way it was, maybe it didn't spill the way it did. You know, when there's a cancer diagnosis, what I will advise is you're not going to die tomorrow of it. You're not going to die next week of it.
Yeah.
And when we hear that word equals death, we're rushing, we're hurrying. But you might have had that cancer for 10 years. So today, tomorrow, 5 days, 3 months, you're not going to die from this straight away unless it's, you know, obstructing something and it's you know, an operation is needed.
Yeah.
Take time. Figure out, think about what way you want to go forward. Don't let anyone push you into it because it's your body.
Yeah.
You know, do it your way is my advice.
Okay.
Think about it, take time.
Hi guys. In today's podcast, we're listening to Gina O'Callaghan's story of her journey from a diagnosis of serious illness to her eventual total recovery, and how she attributes a lot of that to her decision to take control of her own health, change her lifestyle and maximise her wellness. If you'd like to learn more about anything we're discussing in this podcast, you can contact us at info@humanregenerationproject.com or visit the website at www.humanregenerationproject.com. If you'd like to get in touch with Gina, you can contact her on gina@ospa.ie. That's GINA@ospa.ie. With your particular cancer, there was 2 types of cancer.
2 types.
With your cancer, was there any indication given to you of how this happened? Did they say, okay, it's genetic or diet related, or it's because you lived in Hong Kong and were inhaling this smog for so long? Did they explore that with you at all, or was it all treatment focused?
Part of the reason why I went down the research route was I sat in front of the doctor that done the second operation, and I said, why have I got cancer? And he said, I can't tell. I said, will the chemotherapy and radiation get rid of it for good? I don't know. I can't tell. Am I going to die from this treatment? I can't tell. So I'm going to put it this way. I'm like a car, okay?
Yeah.
I'm this beautiful sports car,
Yeah.
and I'm going to a garage, and I'm putting this sports car in to have an MOT or be fixed because it's broken down.
Yeah.
Now, if they say we're going to put this type of oil in, but we don't know if it's going to suit your car, or we're going to put this wheel on, you know, it might not be this size, would you bring your car there?
You'd fly out of the place.
You'd run.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what came to me. I looked at this and said, these people don't know.
Yeah.
So how can they fix me?
Yeah.
You know, how
Yeah.
can they fix me? They don't know. So you have to then take control and say, well, I'm going to find out. And there's more to my story. When I was going through treatment and I got this, I don't knows, I think like this. I said, I have to know. I have to know. And I said to myself, I will find the answer to why I have cancer. And I went to a naturopathic physician in Hong Kong, and I asked for my DNA to be done.
Okay.
And I asked for my heavy metals to be done. And I asked to check candida and my stomach health. And I asked for my vitamin D levels to be done. And my DNA came back, and basically there was a vitamin B12 deficiency in my system, and I wouldn't say it is a mutation, but it's what they call a SNP.
Okay.
There's a kink in the mutation of the DNA.
Which means you absorb or produce vitamin B differently than other people.
Correct.
Would. Yeah.
And so basically, just to give you a little bit of background, what was happening to me was I was taking B12 in. I wasn't able to absorb it through the liver.
Okay.
And also then I had a thing going on where you've got folate and B12 work together.
Yeah.
Folate gets trapped in the cells. It can't come out and do its job because it needs B12.
Okay.
So I had that going on, and it was affecting the liver from detoxing. And what detoxes through the liver is excessive estrogen.
Yeah.
What grew my endometriosis? What grew my fibroids? What grew all the inflammation?
Excessive estrogen.
Excessive estrogen.
Okay.
Bingo, straight away. First piece of the puzzle, I knew this is what I'd done. He straight away put me in a methylated form of B12, which has taken care of that now.
Wow.
Now, if I hadn't done that, where would I have been in 5 years
Yeah.
if all this estrogen had built up in the system again?
Back in the same place?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay, they had taken the uterus and the ovaries, so that would have lowered it. But if I'm like, I was in Hong Kong for 20 years, I didn't drink their tap water, I drank bottled water.
Okay.
Xenoestrogens,
Yeah.
tins of beans I was brought up on, tin tuna, pollution. They're all added estrogens in the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can clear them, what's happening?
Yeah.
It's reacting in the body.
This is what I love, okay, about these conversations, is when people hear about particularly wellness, or I mean, you run an O-Spa here, which is a kind of a wellness facility, I suppose. It's not a spa as such, although there are loads of beautiful treatments here, but this is all science-based. What you're talking to me about here is science-based.
It's science-based.
And even like, it's one of those things where people immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater when they hear holistic. Holistic to me means you're using a bunch of different tools. It doesn't mean airy-fairy or hippy-dippy or anything like that. No disrespect intended to anybody, but for me, holistic means you're using all the tools that you can to make yourself better. And that's just logical to someone like me, and obviously to someone like you as well. And everything you've said to me so far has been science-based.
Science-based, and that's the way and one thing I will mention, there's probably thousands and millions of people in the world that have this. Does it mean they're going to get cancer? No.
Yeah.
Because you see, what I've come to learn is cancer is what we're concentrating on, especially in with doctors that work in that field. They focus on cancer.
Yeah.
Cancer is the problem.
Yeah.
Cancer is a symptom.
It's a symptom. Yeah.
Like diabetes.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's a scarier symptom, and it's
of course it's a very serious symptom.
very, very serious.
Yeah.
But if you look at it like this, and this is the way I look at it, you've got diabetes, you've got heart disease. These are symptoms of a body that has broken.
Yeah.
Of an immune system that went down. So now I'm going to paint a picture of what I think happened to me.
Okay.
So I've had this snip on my DNA I never knew about. I'm just plodding along in life. I know nothing much about nutrition and what it can do for me. So, I never drank, I never smoked. But Coca-Cola, a burger,
Yeah.
a chocolate bar, grab lunch here and there, eating all different types of, bad foods.
Yeah.
I didn't know much better. I just thought that's how you live.
Yeah.
Throw stress on it. So you're just managing, you're getting by. Your parents pass and you're in such grief that your immune system falls.
Deregulates, yeah.
And that's the opportunity the cell took to go awry, and there was no immune system to check it.
Okay.
So what I'm saying to you is cancer is a symptom, but it's only a symptom of not just one thing, not one silver bullet. It's of different things that are going on. How you're internalizing things, what relationship you're in and how that's coming across, what your worries are, what your work life is, if you're in the wrong job or not, if you're in the wrong relationship, if you're eating the wrong food. So when I worked at who I am and who I am today and how well I am, it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's nutrition. It's working on your self-development. I went to counselling when I came home. I had to get it all off my chest.
Yeah.
And it's constant. Life is it's not just that's done now. I'm me. It's a constant. You have to work on yourself. It's wellness.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So on one side we have the things that people generally think about when they think about making yourself healthy are food. Food is kind of the go-to for people who don't really know much about the subject, but they think if you want to be healthier, you have to look at your food. And you've just mentioned there in your specific case there was a genetic issue there. On the other side of things, there's the mind, and the mind is I don't know if it's even more, it definitely has a part to play. If it's bigger than food, if it's I suppose it depends from person to person, but the effect of the mind on your actual body and physiology is something I think is very, very real, but it's very difficult for people to, I think, conceptualize that. Why it's relevant to me is, I know you said something there that resonated with me straight away, is I can't sit for 5 minutes with my thoughts because it's like an assault, so I just never acknowledge them. And a lot of people are like that. You're go and you have your phone, you have your computer, and you have you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you're doing something, so as not to be having to sit in the quiet. And you do notice, and I'm probably not alone in this at all, sometimes it builds up so much, this noise, this white noise, that you start to actually feel it in your body. For me, it's my joints start to ache. I feel stiff. I feel tired. I feel lethargic. And when I look at the rest of my life, I exercise well, I eat well, I sleep relatively well. There's no real reason why I should be feeling like that. But I know that maybe I'm stressed at work, or maybe there's something going on in my personal life, but I physically feel it. So I've always known that my brain can do something to my body. Now, I've never had an experience exactly like you in the machine with the radiography there, or the radiotherapy, where I've manifested something. But I suppose on a smaller level, all of those different symptoms that I'm feeling, I really contribute a lot of that to my mind as well. So when we talk about meditation, you mentioned managing stress there. I think for people who are listening, who meditation almost sounds like a really difficult thing. For some people, it's so intertwined with religion, and they mightn't be religious people, that they immediately just ignore it. And for others, they don't know where to start or how to do it. Some people are kind of using technology to help them, but that's just another kind of distraction for not allowing yourself to be completely quiet. Did you have experience? I know you mentioned your brother and your sister were kind of in that area, that field, but did you have experience before into this with any form of managing your mind or your stress, or did this all come as a result of your experience? Because you were in such a high power job, that level of high functioning is a perfect recipe for never being able to switch off your brain. Because if you're in control of a team of people, for example, or you've responsibilities, especially financial responsibilities to a company or whatever it might be, even when you're lying in bed, that's probably what's going through your brain. Now that you've kind of come through this process, is your brain tuned differently, or do you actually have to work on this and practice this? Because this is what people always want to know. Is Gina just the type of person who can do this, or can we all do this? Is this something that you can actually learn and practice?
Sure. Well, one thing I'll pick up on which is very important, we tend to talk that our mind and our head is separate from our body.
Yeah.
This is how we think. I don't know how we got to this point, but most people think, does my mind, regulate my body? And I'll just give you a simple example of how this works. So you're fast asleep and you're having this terrible nightmare. Someone's chasing you and you're going to die.
Yeah.
When you wake up, what are the typical symptoms of waking up from a bad nightmare?
You're in a cold sweat, your heart rate's up, you're all of a sudden pumping with adrenaline, you're wide awake.
Is it real? Did someone try and chase you?
No.
What picture did the mind show the body?
Someone trying to chase you,
Fight or
and you
flight.
running away. Yeah.
Does that not tell you at
Yeah.
its core that every thought, every feeling, every action, every word that we say out is affecting our cells?
Absolutely.
So our cells are listening.
Yeah.
And the mind has everything to do with it. Okay? And in life, you can't just say, let's think we're going to get well and not actually have actions. It's the mind plus action.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to do all the stuff I was talking about. But the mind commands the cells.
Yeah.
So if people for religious reasons can't do that, I find even just walking alone is a meditation.
Okay.
It's just clearing, it's being allowed just to walk and just take in your surroundings. And that's a form of relaxation and meditation, believe it or not. So yes, very much so. We are one. The mind, body, soul, spirit, it's all there. It's all one. And our thoughts affect the way we internalize and the way our cells behave.
Brilliant.
So it's very, very important to find what you think your meditation is. Well, prayer is a powerful meditation.
Yeah.
If you sit in a church, if you're you go to church and you sit there in silence and even just praying, that's a form of meditation.
Yeah.
It's being alone with your thoughts and then allowing them just to kind of go away and just be one with yourself. So there's many forms of it. People just need to research it.
Is this something that we're obviously sitting in your lovely OSPA here? Is this something that you bring into your work with your clients, or is it just kind of something you practice yourself or for friends and family? Has this influenced the way you work with people?
It influences, for instance, when I do therapies, so say massage, take for instance, that allows a person to deeply relax. Touch is very powerful as well. And certain music, certain frequencies of the music will affect the cells. Okay. And so when you get into that state, relaxation state, that's a form of meditation. Yeah. That's shutting out the world. And I don't talk in my therapies whatsoever.
Okay.
People tend that, you can tell sometimes that's the way they are. They like to have a chat with you. And I would just say to them, this is your time just to be, and politely say that and let them just relax down. And that's going to just benefit them really amazingly, because they're giving themselves a chance just to stop.
Yeah.
Stop thinking and just take it in and relax and let the cells
So
do
as,
what they need to do.
opposed to overly stimulating people when they come in with kind of music and all that kind of stuff, it's all about the
all pared down and just let them be. You know, sometimes my consultations, especially with new people, could take up to 40 minutes.
Wow.
Sometimes there's tears, and all I'm just asking them about is their wellness.
Yeah.
It's that people sometimes just don't know where to put it. They don't know where to put their hurt or their how they're feeling or their worries, and when they come to a place like this, no one's around, they know, and they just stop. Okay. And that's sometimes where it comes out. Yeah. And I don't even personalize, let it happen, and then we move on to the therapies. So yeah, it does, to put it mildly, it does wonders for the whole meditation and mind. And
yeah. It's amazing how you've kind of combined a few different areas into what traditionally people would think a spa is somewhere you go, you get a nice foot rub, and it's a little treat for yourself. But this is a little bit deeper than that.
No, it is.
And there's a lot of you comes into the treatment as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've been through a lot to be sitting here. You've obviously refined your own personal self-management. What does a kind of a day look like for you? Do you have a routine in the day that you would follow religiously, or do you kind of go with how you feel on the day? How does it work for you now that you have all this experience behind you, and you're one of the kind of the go-to people that maybe someone now who might be sick is listening to your story and saying, wow, that's incredible, but that's been a lot of work and a long time coming. What does that look like now for you?
What it looks like is to be very mindful.
Okay.
So in everything you do, and check in yourself when you're, you know, as before all this happened, I'd beat myself up that I said the wrong thing, or now I just accept it and then say, I talk to myself and say, well, I should have handled that well. I'm going to handle this better next time, and let it go. So it's management, and it's being very aware of what you say, how you behave. And I do an awful lot of still research. I'm studying at the moment naturopathic nutrition, and it makes you very aware of even little things like before you eat. You know, back in the day, we used to say a few prayers before we ate to thank for the food. That really translates into allowing the juices and the enzymes in your mouth to get ready, and your stomach to get ready for the food.
Okay.
So even just mindfully living like that, just being thankful when you're cooking the food, just to say a little note to yourself, you're going to digest your food better.
Wow.
It's something as simple as that. So a typical day for me would be to get up and be with my children and take them to school, and open up here, get it ready for the day, and then spend a bit of mindfulness time for myself on how I feel. Most of my journaling will be in the evening, where I'll write down my thoughts and then what I would like to happen the next day. So you can reflect, and then once that's written in that journal, that's gone from your mind before you sleep.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to get it, and of course, you know, we've Wi-Fi. We live in the world of Wi-Fi. That Wi-Fi is turned off, and allow yourself to get to bed early and rest. So you're waking up and you're energized, as opposed to getting up tired.
Yeah.
And again, being mindful about the choices of what you're putting in your mouth. You know, you may think, oh, it's just a chocolate bar, it's with a cup of tea. You know, I need the energy, I need the caffeine. It's what else? What are the other options that, you know, will actually help my day? You know, I used to say what you put in your mouth will either help you towards getting ill or towards getting better, and I train my mind to think like that, so everything I put in is really just for the benefit of how I live.
Okay.
So it's just about being mindful of how you live on everything you do,
considering your choices,
and having empathy for yourself. You're not perfect.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us lose empathy. They especially mums, and I'm not saying about dads too, but just I can speak because I'm a mum. You know, you give everything to your children and your husband, and you want the house ready, and you want, you know, sometimes we just have to stop and say, you know, you're doing well, and just have a bit of empathy for yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's massively important. A lot of people say to me when I recommend podcasts or a book or something like that I resonated with me, they kind of look at me and say, you know what, it might be easy for you. I can't do that. It's very difficult for me. Unless I have a huge health scare, I'm probably not going to be able to change the way I eat or do more exercise. It's just too difficult. I don't have the time, etc. But putting it like that actually puts a different spin on it, because you and me are not going to do the exact same things. Jess here is not going to do the same thing. We're all going to do our own thing. But how do you find that out? Is by being mindful. It's having a little think about, all right, what is this going to do if I put this chocolate bar in my mouth? Or like most people nowadays understand that a little bit of exercise is good for you. So if you decide, I don't have time to do it, well, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. You could probably carve out 5 minutes here or there, but it's about making that your choice and your decision to do it. Because if I tell you to do it, or if Gina tells you to do it, you're probably just going to say, look, it's easy for you, but it's not easy for me. So it is, I like that, being considered.
It's individualistic, and the same with, like, getting back to the cancer thing. Not one person has the same cancer.
Yeah.
Not one person has the same type of disease or how it's there. It's all down to the individual.
Yeah.
So I would never stand there and say you should do this or you should do that. It's individual.
Yeah.
I think if you educate yourself on what's good for you and know yourself, they say we've a second brain in the stomach now, and that's where we get gut feeling from.
Yeah.
So instinctively you're going to know this is crap food that you're putting on the table.
Yeah.
Well, do something about it for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think they definitely have shown that there's a direct link with the lining of the gut and the lining of the brain.
Yes.
And you know yourself, if you eat bad food, you tend not to feel good.
Yes.
And again, for me, I get the joint pains and the inflammation. And so I know when I've eaten bad food. It's not to say my diet is perfect. It's far from it. But I'm starting now, just from the reading I'm doing, talking to people like yourself, just to tune in a little bit more. And while I might not have changed much, I'm just a little bit more aware now of, okay, well, that's how that makes me feel. On the topic of food, and I know it's a funny one because it's not the same for everybody. Everyone reacts totally differently. And again, your B12 issue highlighted that perfectly. I might have or might not have that. So I could spend my entire life eating B12 rich foods and be great, or eating B12 rich foods and I'm actually deficient. But are there some general guidelines or rules that you would have? It's I know it's a dangerous thing to recommend, so I'm not going to ask you to recommend anything, but in terms of understanding food, are there things that you definitely stay away from, and the things that, okay, it's fairly well accepted, this is the healthy way to go, or this is a good food decision for a good amount of people in general? Have you got a concept in your mind of that? I'm sure you do, obviously, having gone through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shame. I think that time has told the story of how fast we need to get food out to the consumers.
Yeah.
And so we're putting our animals under a lot of pressure, and we're clumping them all together, and
we've industrialized the process.
Industrializing it, and
I
don't think meat is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I think what they're feeding the animals and what our end product is a bad thing.
Yeah.
So if you're eating meat, just be mindful. Where does it come from? What have they fed the animal?
Yeah.
It's our responsibility. We're ultimately ingesting it. We're feeding ourselves.
Yeah.
What do we want? We want healthy cells. So it's again just having an understanding of what you're putting in your mouth. So for me personally, I don't eat meat. I didn't want to necessarily take in more estrogens.
Okay.
More antibiotics
Yeah.
Into the system. I just thought, okay, this for me works, and I kept going. But it might necessarily work for you.
Yeah.
So it gets back to the same thing. Just be mindful of where you're getting your food from, your meat from. I know we all can't afford organic, but just even to find out where it's coming from and how they're treating the animals, it's going to affect ultimately ourselves. So a typical day for me would be I don't eat meat. I don't eat dairy for the same reason. Okay, because you're getting estrogens and antibiotics and all that. So my principles are basically what grows in the earth, what's kissed by the sun, is going to basically give me the energy I need to feed my cells. And then, you do have to look at what's deficient because you're not taking the meat in. So I fill that up with like pulses, grains, beans, chickpeas, things like that to kind of balance it out. So we all need a balance of our macro and micro nutrients. And it's just getting that balance right to feed ourselves. So, and I think I mentioned just there a few minutes ago, I'm studying at the moment to be a naturopathic nutritionalist.
Broaden my mind.
Yes, I'm on the second year, one more year to go. And that's a fascinating subject to go into, because the naturopathic side of it is, again, we're all individual. You can't say one diet across the board.
Absolutely.
We got our pyramid of food and say this is going to work for you. No, we're all different. We all behave differently. We all digest things differently. So we look at the whole system for that person, and we base it on their needs. And we never diagnose.
Okay.
We're not doctors.
Yeah.
But we take a plan from your antecedents to your age now, and your antecedents meaning when you're in the womb.
Okay.
When you were born, Were you breastfed? How you came into the world? What was your antibiotic use like?
Yeah.
And then we go on a graph right across to your age now. And we fill in these pieces, these missing pieces, and we find out based on your symptoms how you got to that situation. And then we look at your deficiencies, and then we try and fill that in with plant food, basically. And we also advocate meat and all of that, but again, what I spoke about, clean meat and all the rest. So it's really just looking at the individual and working with them on their needs and try and make little changes along the way for hopefully a better system.
And in terms of testing like that, this is not something that involves blood testing or stuff, or does that come into it?
We can. When I go into practice, we can do that.
Okay.
We have to be trained in that. But what we would probably do is we would send you off for your blood tests and get them back and have a look. We're trained to have a look at what your deficiencies are. And that's another thing, we have this graph of whether you're deficient or
This is what I was going to ask you, because you obviously discovered you had an issue with B12, absorbing B12.
Yep.
These are the kind of things you'd be looking for as well.
We'd be looking at that, but we look at more insufficiency.
Okay.
So again, the graph that you would look at, say for instance B12, you'd have to be up at a certain point in order to not be deficient.
Yeah.
But we look at the point at where it's at to see if it's still insufficient.
Okay.
Because that graph is based on general across the board. And we have to look at the individual on how their symptoms are, how they're performing.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we fill in those gaps with nutrition.
Yeah. It's the same issue when you have your kind of general bloods done, maybe with your GP or whoever. You say, okay, you're between 10 and 14, for example, you're fine. But you're there for a reason, so obviously you're not fine. But because you're in this nice little kind of pigeonhole of you're between marker A and marker B, you're actually fine. So you're actually taking the other approach, which I massively admire, is, okay, you've come with something, you've come with an issue, you've come with a history, you've come with a nutritional plan that you've been on for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. Let's have a look at that and see where the holes are, rather than just relying on the number.
Correct.
Because the number really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't mean anything to an individual. You might be able to look at a population and get an average of something, but for the individual, that number means absolutely nothing. It's same with hormone levels and vitamins, minerals, everything, I suppose.
Correct. And I think education is key here, especially in student clinics. People are just not educated, or they forget, the foundation of what we need to put into our bodies to feed ourselves. So like a couple of bottles of wine a night, or I go into a supermarket and I see people, in my day, sherry or whatever came out on a celebration. Yeah. And now it's the norm to not saying there's anything wrong with that, but we're looking at feeding ourselves. Yeah. Are we born with a wine deficiency? Or an alcohol
Some people would
deficiency?
argue maybe, yeah.
But, so it's finding the balance.
Okay.
And it's like an 80-20 approach. Yeah. 80% of the time you're really in there with your nutrition. And of course, when you are having your wine, it's really to love that experience. Because if we do have even if you are having a cake on the weekend, and you're having that negative feeling around it, you're not digesting it well, and the cells and the body's not accepting it well. So really enjoy that experience. Yeah. So like a 90-20 type of
I like that.
mentality.
I really do like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're constantly, if you know something is up and you constantly are eating a bad diet, it's bad. People nowadays know pretty much what's good and what's bad. You have that attached feeling of guilt. That's a negative. It's also a stress on the system.
There you
go. You're feeling worse as well as fueling with bad food. So it really is a combination approach.
Sure.
It all ties in very, very nicely there. And the other thing about that guilt is when you do kind of moderate or reduce the amount of the cake or the beer or whatever it is, you actually really enjoy the experience. And it's one thing I love my food, and it's one thing I make sure is if I'm being kind of strict about my diet or whatever, when I do have the chocolate or the takeaway, the pizza, which I do have, I really enjoy the experience. Perfect. And then it's doesn't become a craving for me. It's kind of a treat at the end of a week or whatever like that.
Exactly.
Again, on the subject of food, and we touched briefly on the gut there, but this is really a hot topic, if you want to call it, at the moment. Lots of people are talking about gut health and how to repopulate your gut with good bacteria, and your microbiome, and the link between gut and brain. Is this something you've explored and is involved in the naturopathic, the nutrition that the course is doing at the moment?
Sure. I mean, what we've learned, and through my own personal research, is we look at the stomach like the trunk of a tree, okay? And all the branches off that trunk are all your different systems.
Yeah.
So if we don't get the foundation right, how can the other systems work together?
That's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
Okay, so it's always digestive gut first. Really, it is. It's from the mouth all the way down, because believe it or not, how we chew is going.
How we chew?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
So if we're sitting down and we're eating fast and we're not mindfully eating, we're not giving the digestive enzymes in the glands in the mouth enough time to attach to the food and go down and signal inside the stomach for your hydrochloric acid to come out and start digesting that. So if we're just shoving it down, we've missed that process to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And then, we start getting stomach issues like this is not digesting, it's giving me gas and so forth. So it brings back again to the mindfulness starting with the mouth.
Yeah. Didn't your mother used to say chew 100 times before you swallow or
That's
something
why.
like that? Yeah.
And if we look back at all what our mums and our grandmothers taught us, it's even the fasting. If you remember, on a Friday we'd have fish or we'd fast, or that's to give the body time just to regenerate and just not focus solely on digestion. Is to look at what else needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
We need to actually bring some of those old studies back that we used to do. But getting back to the digestive system, so we look at it as the trunk of a tree, and we need to get this right in order for all the other processes to work.
Okay.
So with the genetically modified foods nowadays, when we're ingesting them, our body's not recognizing them, and they're assaulting the lining of the stomach, and this is how we get leaky gut.
Okay.
Now there's a process to it. I'm not going to get into it so heavily, but just to make it in simple terms, when we eat stuff that are modified, or too much of the wrong stuff, we're affecting the cells in our stomach. We're affecting the levels of acid to digest the food.
Yeah.
And then we get leaky gut, and leaky gut is going to leak out stuff that shouldn't be really in the system.
Yeah.
And this is how we're able to get all these autoimmunes today.
Okay.
Because the immune system doesn't know what's going on. What is this in my system?
Yeah.
So we just have to, again, be very mindful of what we're putting in, the choices. Try and go for, if you're eating grains, to eat organically. And wheat and gluten tend to be the two things that would really assault that stomach lining and make holes in that stomach for leaky gut.
Yeah.
So some people can manage it fine, and others just cannot take wheat in any shape or form. Back in the day, when they first start growing wheat, it was the natural wheat, but today it's so refined. They want the right colour, the right to stay fresh. It's completely modified to what we used to eat, and the body's not recognizing it.
Okay.
So it's stomach health is very, very important, I would say.
And I mentioned it briefly there, but a lot of people will kind of say, oh, well, look, 90% of the stuff in the shopping centre is genetically modified now. I mean, obviously in the States it's a huge issue. Here we're a little bit luckier in that a lot of stuff is locally grown. We produce our own meat, we produce our own vegetables. So with a little bit of research, I feel like most people, you don't have to be buying the expensive organic stuff off the expensive organic shelf in the supermarket, but with a little bit of reading, a little bit of research, you can... I think so many people are at such a high level of ingesting the wrong type of stuff that even a small change,
tiny change
would make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
A huge difference. And it could even be, don't even change the food, maybe just chew a little bit more before you swallow your food. Yeah.
Exactly. And just like things like, snacks are a big thing now.
Yeah.
We find like people like to snack in between meals, and, we could possibly be eating like, say, fruit, like a piece of fruit. And we're saying we've done good, we've eaten an apple. And it's a wonderful thing to eat. However, we're looking at the sugar content in the fruit. Now, what I'm being taught is that sugar content in the fruit, even though there's fibre in the apple, still has an effect on the cells, on the uptake. So just to be mindful to put a little bit of protein with that fruit will completely slow down that sugar uptake.
Yeah.
So it's just about being clever with your choices on how you eat and being mindful, getting back to the mindfulness of eating and small changes can really affect how you feel and how you digest your food.
Yeah, that is really a key. Unless you're unfortunate enough to have hit a major medical issue and you have to transform yourself. For anyone who wants to start now, a really small change. It's the only way I can do it personally, is
Yes.
to change something really small, give it a week, maybe change something else. And 6 months time you look back, you've totally radicalized your lifestyle. You're a completely different person.
Yep.
But it starts, it's an old cliche, but it really is true. Start with something very, very small, and when you notice the change, you're more likely then to, I feel a little bit better, maybe I'll do something else. And then that's kind of a positive rolling effect, as opposed to a negative, which people kind of get into a negative cycle. I feel a little bit bad, sure, I'll just have a bit of chocolate, now I feel a bit worse. Have a coffee to perk myself up, okay, I'm buzzing for a while, now I'm down again, maybe I'll just have another little biscuit with this. And then it becomes constant, and you put on a little bit of weight and you feel a little bit worse, you're not sleeping so good, and that's a negative cycle, as opposed to when you make these small changes one at a time, it's a little bit more of a positive thing. And this is not to sound patronizing to anybody, but I am always being asked, and I'm not an expert in any of these fields, but they always ask, like, how can I make the change? What can I do? How do I change my diet? How do I become a better athlete? Or how do I manage my cancer? Whatever it might be, whoever I might be speaking to. And I think it should start with something really, really small. It's the most manageable way to do things. You obviously had to come at it from a different angle, because you were given 24 hours notice before your life completely changed. But yeah, if we're to look at people who have now time and the opportunity, a little small change goes a long, long way. In terms of, if people wanted to find out more about you or your story or what you do, or contact you maybe for a treatment, what's the best way to get in touch with you to learn more about your journey, or maybe even to find out some of the resources that you used in your journey? Because we've mentioned that you've done a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I know people will be interested in maybe doing their own little bit of reading. You mentioned the anti-cancer book. Are there other kind of well-known or less well-known resources that you would recommend for people to go after?
Sure. I have a blog.
Very good.
So that would be naturalnewyou.com.
naturalnewyou.com.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's got my story on it. But I also put on there some books that I have read.
Okay.
And I'll be putting more on as well. I'll be updating that. But the foundation, the really good books, you'll find there's a list there of what I recommend. And you can find me at ospa.ie if you wanted to look up what therapies I have to offer.
Brilliant.
So they're the two ways. And just one more thing I'd like to bring in, if I'd like to talk about, which I feel is quite important, is I'm studying at the moment also to become a sound practitioner.
A sound practitioner?
Yeah. So basically I've looked into this, and it's to do with, and I've learned this in the naturopathic nutrition as well. When we first found the cell and we started looking into what made up a cell, they found, obviously, you've got the protons, the neutrons, the electrons.
Yeah.
And now science has brought that they're actually looking past this. And what drives atoms, basically, are like little vortex of energies. So with that in mind, you've got a vortex of energy that makes up an atom. And then atoms make up molecules. This is very sciencey now. And
Go for it.
Molecules are making up cells.
Okay.
And we're made of cells.
Yeah.
So at the core of who we are, we're energy.
Yeah.
Okay? So we, again, being mindful, we're in the kitchen, we're near a microwave, we're near a fridge, we're watching the TV, we've got our phone on us all the time. These tones that are coming off, these electricities are coming off, they do affect us.
Is this like the dirty electricity to talk about from electrical
It's a bit
devices?
like that, but even just as a day to day,
Yeah.
like, even just voice is a very strong sound.
Yeah.
So that's how we feel hurt when someone says something in a manner or a tone.
Yeah.
It's resonating in our cells.
Oh, anybody in a relationship knows all about the importance of tone when
Exactly.
people make comments. Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I sought this course out. And I'm on my second level. I will graduate this year. And what I use is different bowls, Himalayan bowls, crystal bowls, tuning forks.
Okay.
And what I do with that is sometimes, if, say for instance, you are getting a lot of negativity off a person and you're holding yourself in a tense way, or it might be an injury, you're holding yourself in a tense way. We have an emotional element to that, why we're holding ourselves like that.
Yeah.
And there could be energy blockages in that area. So you could be going to physio and you could be doing nothing for you. You could be getting massages and it's still there. Well, I bring in the sound into that. And what we do is we use the vibrational the sound off the bowls resonate the same level of what your cells need.
Okay.
Okay, so we would do a clearing and balancing of the body first, and then we would go with the tuning forks on specific areas of trouble, and sometimes that will help just get that energy into the cells that are clumped together and start helping them to move along.
Really?
It's a very, very powerful treatment, and so I hope to bring that into the practice in November.
And have you worked with clients in your training so far?
I'm currently doing case studies with it.
Okay.
So I don't quite offer it yet because I've got the second certification, but I prefer to be fully a practitioner before I do that, which will be November. But it's very, very, very powerful.
What kind of stuff have you seen in your case studies? How have people reacted, I suppose, when they have these treatments?
Well, even just from a point of view of retaining water, for instance,
Yeah.
Stagnation in the body. You know, people don't like to move, which they should, but sometimes people have an issue with it. Even just putting a person in a bowl and banging the bowl and that vibration going up through the body, the feedback of people saying, I went to the toilet all night.
Yeah.
I can't believe I feel less as if carrying less water today. It's the vibration that the body accepts and starts helping the cells move and the health of the cells and so forth. So that's going to be a massive part of my practice now coming into November as well.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'll have to look into that myself now.
So again, you know, I'll finish with it takes different modalities to get you well, and it's not necessarily just changing your diet or going for a walk. You know, we need to look at the whole system, the mind, the body, the spirit. It's all connected. It's not just one thing that gets us unhealthy. To keep us well and strong, we need to be feeding all of these modalities, really. You know?
It is an important point. I make it in a lot of different podcasts when I speak to people, is that you have not once in this podcast spoken against conventional medicine or traditional medicine or anything of the sort. I think actually at the start you clarified that as well. You think medicine is a fantastic tool to have, and I'm the exact same. I'm fascinated by medicine and science and what it can do to help people. And there are you went through chemo and radiotherapy or yourself, and there are many treatments that people really do need and does help them. But it's only one tool, and there's a huge toolbox, and a lot of the things that you've described there make up the rest of that toolbox. So if there's one overriding message that I'll take away from this, and I hope people take away as well, is that you have most of the tools yourself at your disposal. It's understanding how to use them, maybe, is what most people lack, or understanding how they can be effective in your case, and getting past that little bit of fear that the only way to do this is to wait until you get sick and then go and try and get rid of whatever the sickness is. It's actually not the case. It's the opposite is in fact the case. And sometimes when we speak to Dr. Van Eden a lot on this podcast as well, he is a doctor, a medical doctor, and he does come from a treatment background, but he himself, every single time I speak to him, says that it's only one tool, and he often advises people to have a deeper look inside nutrition, wellness, mindfulness, stress levels, sleep, everything is a massive part of that. So that is a big message that I'm constantly trying to get out there to people, is you don't have to be an expert in any one of these, or just throw all of your chips in with the doctor, or all of your chips in with nutrition. A little bit of everything can put you in a much better place. And what I'm getting from your story is it's obviously been massively successful for you.
Massively.
And it's an incredible story, really interesting story. And it's been a privilege to sit here and chat to you. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. And just let me leave you with this. You know, we're not deficient in medicine. We're not deficient in going for a walk. We're not deficient in sound therapy. We're not deficient in any of these. The body is craving to heal itself, okay? So we need to give it that chance. If we look at life like that, we need to mindfully think about how we live, what we say, the relationships we're in, what we put in our mouths. The body wants to heal the second it's hurt. You just have to give it the chance. And what we're looking for is homeostasis in the body, balance and harmony. So these modalities that I'm offering, they're not going to heal you, because the body heals itself. It's just assisting that process, even with the nutrition. So healing is in the person's hands. And as you said, I'll state it again, I'm not against doctors. I think they're wonderful. I'm not against chemo. I'm not against radiation, anything like that. I'm pro healing, and I feel it's in the person's hands.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Gina, thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
definitely have to catch up with you again once you're finished your studies to find out how you're getting on with the sound therapy and the naturopathic nutrition and all that kind of stuff. But for now, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dan. A pleasure.
If you'd like to learn more about anything we discussed in this podcast, or if there's a particular topic you'd like to hear us cover, you can contact us at info@humanregenerationproject.com or visit the website at www.humanregenerationproject.com. If you'd like to get in touch with Gina, you can contact her on gina@ospa.ie. That's GINA@ospa.ie. If you enjoyed the podcast, please pass it along to anyone else you think might benefit from listening. And you can show your support by following the Human Regeneration Project on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.